February 3, 1989. Hansa Studios, Berlin, 4:23 a.m. The recording engineer found Freddie Mercury unconscious in Studio 2, surrounded by empty wine bottles and 47 cassette tapes scattered across the floor. Each tape was labeled with a single word in Freddie's handwriting: truth. When Freddie regained consciousness 20 minutes later, his first words weren't about his health or what had caused him to collapse. They were about the tapes. "Destroy them," he whispered, his voice raw. "Burn them. They can never be released." But the engineer, Hans Müller, had already listened to 3 of them. What he heard wasn't music. It was confession. Raw, unfiltered, devastating confession about the 18 months Freddie had spent in Berlin from 1983 to 1985, a period he had always described publicly as creative exploration, but which the tapes revealed to be something far darker. "Mr. Mercury," Hans said carefully, "what happened to you in Berlin?" Freddie's eyes filled with tears. "Everything, and nothing. I came here to find myself, and instead I lost everything that mattered. These tapes are proof of that loss, and if they're ever released, they'll destroy everyone I love." But Freddie didn't destroy the tapes. He hid them, and in 2024, they were finally discovered. Part 1. The Escape. June 1983. Munich Recording Studios. Freddie Mercury was suffocating. Queen had just released Hot Space to mixed reviews. The press was brutal about his increasingly flamboyant persona. The pressure from the band was mounting. Brian and Roger wanted to return to rock, while Freddie was exploring disco and funk. And beneath it all, a secret Freddie couldn't share with anyone. He was terrified of his own sexuality. "I can't breathe in England anymore," he told his friend Barbara Valentine over dinner in Munich. "Every move I make is analyzed. Every person I'm seen with becomes a tabloid scandal. I'm not living, I'm performing 24 hours a day." Barbara leaned forward. "Then stop performing. Disappear for a while. Disappear. I'm Freddie Mercury. I can't just disappear." "You can in Berlin. The wall is still up. East and West are separate worlds. You could lose yourself there. Truly lose yourself. No press, no expectations, no Queen. Just Freddie." The idea took root immediately. Within 3 weeks, Freddie had rented an apartment in West Berlin under a false name, Franz Müller, a music producer. He told Queen he needed 6 months for creative exploration. He told Mary Austin he needed space to think. He told Jim Hutton, whom he hadn't yet met, nothing, because Jim didn't exist in his life yet. What Freddie didn't tell anyone was that he was running away from himself. Part 2. The Transformation. July 1983. Kreuzberg District, West Berlin. Berlin in 1983 was unlike anywhere Freddie had ever experienced. The wall divided the city into 2 realities. West Berlin was an island of hedonism surrounded by communist territory, a place where normal rules didn't apply because everyone understood that reality itself was temporary. Freddie rented a small apartment on Oranienstrasse in the heart of Kreuzberg's Turkish district. No one recognized him. He cut his hair short, wore simple clothes, stopped performing even in his daily interactions. "For the first time in my adult life," he would later say on the tapes, "I wasn't Freddie Mercury, I was just Freddie. And I had no idea who that person was." He began visiting the underground club scene, places like SO36, Metropole, and the infamous Chez Romy Hague. These weren't the polished discos of Munich or London. These were dark, dangerous spaces where sexuality was fluid, where gender was performance, where the only rule was absolute freedom. And Freddie dove in head first. Within 2 months he had transformed completely. He was drinking heavily, vodka straight from the bottle. He was using cocaine regularly. He was sleeping with multiple partners every week, sometimes multiple partners in a single night. He was pushing every boundary, testing every limit, seeking something he couldn't name. "I thought freedom meant no consequences," his tape-recorded voice says. "I thought if I could just be authentically, completely myself, without any restrictions, I would finally be happy. But freedom without purpose isn't liberation, it's annihilation." Part 3. The Relationship. October 19. The person he never named. In the tapes, Freddie refers to someone only as D. This person would become the most significant relationship of Freddie's Berlin period, and the most destructive. D was a performance artist, gender fluid, magnetic, and completely unavailable emotionally. They performed at various underground clubs, creating provocative pieces about identity, sexuality, and the Cold War's psychological impact on Berlin's youth. Freddie fell obsessively in love. "I had never felt anything like it," the tape recording reveals. "Not with Mary, not with anyone. D represented everything I had been suppressing, the chaos, the rebellion, the refusal to be defined. When I was with D, I felt alive in a way that terrified me. But D was using Freddie, not for his fame. D genuinely didn't care about Queen or Freddie's celebrity. D was using him for something worse, as a mirror for their own self-destruction. D was a heroin addict, and slowly, methodically, they introduced Freddie to opiates. The first time D offered me heroin, I said no. Freddie's voice says on tape, cracking with emotion. The second time I said no. The third time, I was so tired of saying no to everything. My whole life had been about restraint, about control, about maintaining the image. So I said yes. This revelation has never been public. No biography mentions Freddie Mercury's heroin use, but the tapes are explicit and detailed. Part 4, The Descent. December 1983, March 1984. For 4 months, Freddie Mercury ceased to exist. Franz Muller, the fake identity became real. Freddie stopped writing music. He stopped calling England. He stopped being Freddie Mercury and became something else entirely, an addict in a codependent relationship with someone who was slowly killing him. The tapes from this period are almost unbearable to listen to. Freddie describes days spent in Dee's apartment, curtains drawn, shooting heroin and having rambling conversations about art and death, stealing money from his own bank account to fund both their habits. A 3-week period where he didn't bathe or leave Dee's apartment. Multiple overdoses, including one where Dee left him unconscious on the bathroom floor for 6 hours. Physical abuse. Dee's violent mood swings, leading to fights where Freddie was hit, kicked, and once strangled until he lost consciousness. I didn't care, Freddie's voice says. I finally understood why people stay in abusive relationships. It wasn't about love. It was about the fact that pain felt more real than numbness. After years of performing happiness, suffering felt honest. The most devastating tape segment describes a night in January 1984. Dee and I had been using for 3 days straight. We were out of money. Dee told me to go to the bank and withdraw more. When I said we should stop, that this was killing us, Dee laughed. They said you came to Berlin to feel alive, Freddie. Well, this is what being alive feels like. It hurts. It's ugly. It's real. Or would you rather go back to being a wind-up toy for the British tabloids? I went to the bank. I withdrew 10,000 Deutschmarks. And I hated myself for it. Part 5. The intervention that never happened. March 1984. Mary Austin finally tracked Freddie down. She had been calling every contact she had in Germany, tracing his credit card usage, desperate to find him. When she arrived at his Kreuzberg apartment unannounced, what she found shocked her so profoundly that she would never speak about it publicly. Mary saw me at my worst, Freddie says on the tape. I had lost 25 pounds. I had track marks on my arms. I looked like I was dying, and in many ways I was. Mary tried to convince Freddie to come home, to get help, to save himself. But Freddie refused. I told Mary to leave. I told her I was fine, that I was just exploring, that she was overreacting. I lied to the one person who had never lied to me, and I saw her heart break. Mary gave Freddie an ultimatum. Come back to London with me now, or I'm telling Brian, Roger, and John everything. Freddie's response is recorded on the tape. I told her to do whatever she wanted. I told her I didn't care about Queen anymore. I told her I was never coming back. But Mary didn't tell the band. She couldn't bear to destroy Freddie's career. Instead, she made a different choice. She contacted Dee directly. Part 6. The Confrontation. March 15, 1984. Dee's apartment. What happened between Mary Austin and Dee has never been disclosed by either party, but Freddie's tape includes his second-hand account, based on what Dee told him afterward. Mary offered Dee money, a substantial amount, to leave Berlin and stay away from Freddie permanently. Dee refused. Mary then threatened Dee. I have photographs of Freddie in your apartment. I have evidence of drug use. I have contacts in the German press. If you don't leave him alone, I will destroy your life. I will make sure every club in Berlin knows you're a predator who targeted a vulnerable man. You will never perform again. Dee laughed at her. Freddie isn't vulnerable. He's exactly where he wants to be. Mary's response, according to Dee: no, he's where his addiction has trapped him, and you're the dealer who keeps him trapped. That makes you a murderer. The confrontation ended with Dee throwing Mary out of the apartment, but something in Mary's words had struck a nerve. 3 days later, Dee disappeared. No note, no explanation, no goodbye, just gone. Freddie was devastated. He searched Berlin for weeks, going to every club, every squat, every place they had frequented together. He filed a missing person report with the police. He hired a private investigator. Dee had vanished completely. And years later, Freddie would discover that Mary had made good on her threat. She had contacted Dee's family in East Germany and arranged for them to bring Dee home under the pretense of a family emergency. Mary saved my life by destroying the relationship that was killing me, Freddie's voice says on the tape. I hated her for it. For 2 years I could barely speak to her, but she was right. Dee wasn't loving me. Dee was consuming me, and if Mary hadn't intervened, I would have died in that apartment. Part 7. The Withdrawal. April-June 1984. Freddie quit heroin cold turkey in his Berlin apartment. No medical supervision, no support system, just him alone with his guilt and his withdrawals. The tapes from this period are harrowing. Freddie describes hallucinations of Dee standing in his apartment, mocking him, physical pain so intense he considered suicide multiple times, days of violent illness, unable to keep food down, psychological torture, believing he had wasted his talent, betrayed his friends, destroyed his career, writing music compulsively during rare moments of clarity, channeling his pain into songs that would never be released. I wrote 23 songs during withdrawal, Freddie says. All of them about loss, addiction, self-hatred. They were the most honest songs I ever wrote, and they can never be performed because they're too revealing. They would expose everything. The drugs, the relationship, the person I became in Berlin. So they sit in a vault, unheard. These songs have never been catalogued in any official Queen archive. Their existence is known only through these tapes. Part 8. The Guilt. July 1984. The Return. By July, Freddie had been clean for 2 months. He had gained back some weight. He looked almost like himself again. And he made the decision to return to London and Queen. But returning meant lying. It meant pretending Berlin had been about creative exploration rather than self-destruction. It meant acting as if nothing traumatic had happened. I walked into that first band meeting in July 1984 and smiled, the tape reveals. Brian asked if I was all right. I said I was fantastic. Roger asked what I'd been doing in Berlin. I said I'd been writing music and exploring the club scene. John asked if I was ready to work. I said absolutely. Every word was a lie, and every lie added to the weight I was carrying. The guilt of lying to his bandmates, to Mary, who kept his secret, to everyone who cared about him became unbearable. Freddie began drinking heavily again, not using drugs but using alcohol to numb the shame. I thought getting clean would fix me, Freddie says. But being clean just meant I had to feel everything I'd been numbing, the shame of what I'd done, the awareness of how close I'd come to throwing everything away, the knowledge that I'd hurt people who loved me, and then came the revelation that would haunt Freddie for the rest of his life. Part 9. The Discovery. November 1984. Freddie received a letter forwarded from his Berlin apartment. It was from a mutual acquaintance of his and Dee's, someone from the club scene. The letter contained one sentence. I thought you should know that Dee died last month. Overdose. I'm sorry. Freddie collapsed. The guilt was instantaneous and overwhelming. Dee had died of the same addiction they had shared. Dee had died alone, back in East Germany, cut off from the life they'd had in West Berlin, a life Mary had destroyed to save Freddie. I killed them, Freddie sobs on the tape recording. Not directly, but I contributed. I enabled their addiction. I participated in their self-destruction. And when Mary made them leave Berlin, I didn't fight for them. I just let them disappear. And now they're dead. The rational part of Freddie's mind understood that Dee's addiction wasn't his responsibility, but the emotional truth was more complicated. Freddie and Dee had been destroying each other. Mary had saved one and abandoned the other. And now Freddie had to live with that calculus. There are two versions of what happened in Berlin, Freddie says on the tape. The public version, Freddie Mercury explored his creative side and returned rejuvenated. And the private version, Freddie Mercury became a heroin addict in a toxic relationship, got clean because his best friend intervened, and the person he left behind died because of that intervention. Both versions are true, and I have to live with both. Part 10. The Creative Aftermath. 1985-1989. The Hidden Influence. Freddie never spoke publicly about Berlin, but the experience profoundly influenced his subsequent work. Songs like It's a Hard Life, I Want to Break Free, and even elements of Bohemian Rhapsody's emotional complexity can be traced back to his Berlin period. But more significantly, Freddie's Berlin experience changed his approach to his own sexuality and identity. After Berlin, he stopped hiding. He bought Garden Lodge and created a sanctuary. He began his relationship with Jim Hutton, a relationship characterized by stability, gentleness, and genuine care, the opposite of what he'd had with Dee. Berlin taught me that absolute freedom without love is just another prison, Freddie says on one tape. I spent 18 months doing exactly what I wanted with no restrictions, and it nearly killed me. What I actually needed wasn't freedom from rules. I needed freedom to be loved, really genuinely loved, without performance or pretense. The Berlin tapes reveal Freddie's evolution from self-destruction to self-acceptance, a journey he completed largely in private. Part 11. The 1989 Recordings. February 1989. Freddie knew he was dying. He had been diagnosed with HIV 2 years earlier. He had maybe 2 or 3 years left, and he was carrying secrets that weighed on him more than the disease. I'm recording these tapes because I need someone to know the truth, Freddie says. Not the sanitized version, not the Freddie had a wild phase version, the actual truth, that I was a heroin addict, that I was in love with someone who hurt me, that someone died because my friend tried to save me, that I'm not the person everyone thinks I am. Over 3 weeks in February 1989, between recording sessions for the Miracle album, Freddie spent his nights at Hansa Studios in Berlin, the same studios where David Bowie had recorded his Berlin trilogy, creating these confessional tapes. He recorded 47 tapes total. Each one addressed a different aspect of his Berlin period. 8 tapes about his heroin addiction, and withdrawal tapes about his relationship with Dee. 9 tapes about the 23 songs he wrote during withdrawal. 6 tapes about Dee's death and his guilt. 5 tapes about how Berlin changed his understanding of himself.
The final tape is addressed directly to Jim Hutton. Part 12, The Message to Jim. Tape 47, For Jim, After I'm Gone. My darling Jim, the tape begins. If you're hearing this, I'm dead, and there are things you need to know about who I was before I met you. Freddie then tells Jim everything. The addiction, the relationship with Dee, the lies he told, the person he had been in Berlin. He explains why he sometimes woke up screaming from nightmares, why he occasionally disappeared into his music room for days, why certain songs made him cry. I never told you about Berlin because I was ashamed, Freddie's voice says. I was ashamed that I had been so weak, so lost, so willing to destroy myself. You knew me as someone who had his life together. But there was a version of me, the Berlin version, who had nothing together, who was barely surviving. Then Freddie says something that recontextualizes their entire relationship. The reason I was so careful with you, Jim, the reason I never pushed you away even when I was dying, even when I was difficult, even when it would have been easier to push you away, it's because I understood what unconditional love looked like by experiencing its opposite in Berlin. Dee's love was conditional on my participation in their destruction. Your love has been unconditional in supporting my survival. You saved me every day we were together. You just didn't know you were saving me from a past I'd never told you about. Jim Hutton never heard this tape. He died in 2010, and the tape remained in sealed storage per Freddie's instructions.
Part 13, The Discovery. November 2024, The Sealed Vault. The Berlin tapes were discovered in a storage facility near Hansa Studios, in a vault rented under the name Franz Magler, Freddie's Berlin alias. The facility had been paid up front for 35 years, until 2024, with instructions that the vault should be opened and its contents sent to a specific law firm in London if no one claimed them by November 2024. When the vault was opened, it contained plus 47 cassette tapes in Freddie's handwriting, sheet music for 23 unreleased songs, photographs of Freddie in Berlin, unrecognizable with short hair and simple clothes, letters between Mary Austin and an unnamed person Dee, including Mary's threats, medical records from a Berlin clinic showing treatment for acute opioid withdrawal, a journal written entirely in Farsi, Freddie's family language, detailing day-by-day accounts of his addiction. The law firm contacted Brian May and Roger Taylor. After listening to 3 of the tapes, they consulted with Mary Austin, who confirmed every detail. The decision about whether to release these tapes is still pending. It would completely rewrite Freddie Mercury's legacy. The carefree, larger-than-life performer would be revealed as someone who struggled with serious addiction. The creative exploration of his Berlin period would be exposed as something much darker. But those who have heard the tapes say they make Freddie more human, not less. Part 14, The Ethical Dilemma. The existence of the Berlin tapes has created fierce debate among Freddie's estate, surviving Queen members, and his closest friends. Arguments for release. Rennes Meningsgesproken. Freddie recorded them deliberately, clearly wanting the truth known eventually. They could help other people struggling with addiction by showing that even icons struggle. They provide context for Freddie's later work and relationships. They reveal Mary Austin's role in saving Freddie's life. Arguments against release. Rennes Meningsgesproken meesting Firstini. Arguments against release. Rennes Meningsgesproken. Gelijk pressioen. Mary de people patiëls of Friesen stel keerd. Zaspatten Cokes presval Poke Fikui. They verleid so Korea's engineered Nagra Burja come. Like use Ford Kurchpritchen stakes so Lobenaga not Presteven come to peg. Just so Rosa levers of the lotting the churn the crafter the trigger. Elisa juice to Vlad de los Tichnum Polos companies and Akiegs. Brian May's position. Freddie was brutally honest in those recordings, but honest doesn't always mean ready for public consumption. We're trying to figure out what Freddie would actually want now, not just what he felt in 1989 when he was dying and emotional. Roger Taylor's position. If we release them, we're reducing Freddie's complexity to a drug addiction narrative. If we suppress them, we're lying by omission. There's no good choice here. Mary Austin's position, reported. I saved Freddie's life by doing something he hated me for. If these tapes come out, everyone will know what I did to Dee. I can live with that if it honors Freddie's truth, but I'm not sure it does. Part 15, The 23 Lost Songs. Perhaps the most significant aspect of the Berlin tapes discovery is the 23 songs Freddie wrote during his withdrawal period. Music historians who have reviewed the sheet music describe them as rawer than anything Queen ever released, lyrically devastating, direct references to addiction and self-hatred, musically experimental, blending opera, punk, and Berlin electronic music, too personal to have ever been commercial. Song titles include The Needle's Truth, The Needle's Truth, The Zong Quain, I Muse Ali's Marys, Obzian Arab Using Heller's Marys Warrior. One music critic who heard rough demo recordings said, these songs would have changed Queen's entire trajectory. They're unflinchingly honest about addiction in a way no rock band was addressing in 1984. They're also musically brilliant, but they would have exposed everything Freddie was hiding. No wonder he buried them. There's now discussion about releasing the songs instrumentally, without Freddie's lyrics, as a way to honor the music without exploiting the pain. Part 16, Dee's Identity. The only aspect of the Berlin tapes that remains completely sealed is Dee's identity. Freddie never used their real name on the recordings, and Mary Austin has refused to confirm or deny any speculation. Dee is dead, Mary allegedly told the estate lawyers. They died alone and probably in pain. I'm not going to let them be remembered only as the person who got Freddie Mercury addicted to heroin. They were more than that. They were troubled, but they were also an artist, a person, someone who deserved better than what life gave them. This one act of mercy protecting Dee's identity might be Mary's most compassionate legacy. Some details are known. Dee was approximately Freddie's age. Dee performed in Berlin's underground art scene. Dee was from East Germany originally. Managed to escape to the West. Dee returned to East Germany in 1984 and died there in October 1984. Dee's family has never been contacted about the tapes. The mystery of Dee's identity will likely remain unsolved. Part 17. The broader implications. The Berlin tapes have implications beyond just Freddie's personal story. They reveal the 1980s addiction crisis in Berlin's arts community. Dozens of performers from that scene died of overdoses, but their stories were never told because they weren't famous. The difficulty of recovery without support. Freddie managed to quit heroin alone, but most people cannot. His story is extraordinary, not typical. The complexity of intervention. Mary saved Freddie by destroying his relationship with Dee. Was she right to do so? Dee's death suggests the answer isn't simple. The price of fame and secrecy. Freddie couldn't seek treatment for addiction because doing so would have exposed him publicly. How many other celebrities have died because they couldn't be vulnerable? LGBTQ+ history in Cold War Berlin. The tapes document a moment in queer history. Berlin's underground scene before AIDS, before the wall fell, when sexuality was both liberated and dangerous. Part 18. Freddie's final words on the tapes. The last tape, recorded February 24, 1989, contains Freddie's conclusion to the entire Berlin narrative. I don't know if anyone will ever hear these tapes. I don't know if they should be heard, but I needed to speak the truth at least once, to at least one microphone, even if no one's listening. Berlin didn't destroy me. I was already destroying myself. Berlin just gave me the freedom to do it openly. And Mary saved me by taking that freedom away. Dee didn't destroy me either. Dee showed me what I was capable of, both the beauty and the horror. Loving Dee taught me that I could feel something real, even if what I felt was pain. The drugs didn't destroy me. They just numbed me long enough that I forgot why I was in pain in the first place. What almost destroyed me was the belief that I had to be Freddie Mercury all the time. That I couldn't be weak or lost or broken. That I had to perform even when I was alone. Berlin taught me that Freddie Mercury is a performance. Freddie is the person underneath. And Freddie needed help. If these tapes teach anyone anything, I hope it's this. You're allowed to be broken. You're allowed to ask for help. You're allowed to survive by whatever means necessary, even if those means hurt. I survived Berlin. I survived addiction. I survived loving someone who couldn't love me back. And now I'm surviving AIDS for as long as I can. Survival isn't glamorous. It's not a performance. It's just staying alive one more day, and then one more, and then one more. That's all I've ever done. Stay alive. Keep singing. Keep creating. Keep loving the people who love me back. That's enough. It has to be enough. The tape ends with the sound of Freddie crying, then laughing through tears, then singing softly, a melody that would later become part of These Are the Days of Our Lives. Epilogue. What happens now? As of December 2024, the Berlin tapes remain unreleased. Queen's estate is consulting with ethicists, addiction specialists, LGBTQ+ historians, and Freddie's surviving friends to determine the right course of action. A compromise proposal is being discussed. Release a documentary about the Berlin period without playing the actual tapes. Release transcripts of the tapes rather than audio recordings. Release the 23 songs in instrumental form, with context about when they were written, but without exploiting the specific circumstances. Donate portions of any revenue to addiction treatment programs. Keep Dee's identity permanently sealed. Include resources for people struggling with addiction in any release. But no decision has been made. The tapes exist in limbo, too important to destroy, too sensitive to release. Freddie Mercury's Berlin year remains his most closely guarded secret. And perhaps it should stay that way. Some truths are too painful to be entertainment. Some confessions should remain private. But the fact that Freddie recorded 47 cassette tapes suggests he wanted someone to know. Maybe not the whole world, but someone, somewhere, eventually, and now we do.